everybody. Oh no. Oh no. There we go. Are we on? Yeah, we're on. I'm plugged in. Okay, everything. Guess who just got home? I said, oh, I get it. She's out. It snowed today. You know. I said, I can sneak it in. She's out for the evening. And then I sit down here. I put my butt on my little ottoman. And then I hear, creak, 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 stop. She's taking her dog out. It's 2 degrees outside. 2 degrees. 2 degrees, too. In Connecticut. Okay. Leslie Zazoo Plazz here. Oh, man. Just getting started. Zazoo Plazz. So expect to hear some background noise. It's just her coming home. I'm going to ignore it and do my thing. Anyway, and then I can go have my paleo hot chocolate snack because I'm hungry. She's going to be stomping on my head now. Anyway, Zazoo Plazz Report for Super Bowl weekend. This is my special Super Bowl edition. It's February 7th, Saturday night, about 9 o'clock, 9:15. But I'm going to post this, so most people will be seeing it on Sunday, on Super Bowl Sunday. I just don't want this hanging over my head for the whole weekend. I want to, I'm going to go after this, post my video, have my snack, my cashew butter rice cake and that whole stuff, my marshmallows. And then I'm going to make clam chowder in the Instapot because, I'm going to have that tonight. And for tomorrow night, because the Patriots are playing, go Pats! Yay! You know what side I'm on. I'm a New Englander. Gotta cheer for the Pats, love the Pats. But, it's going to be, hopefully it'll be a good game. I don't know about the halftime show. Like I was saying, I got stuff to make little pizzas for tomorrow. The game will probably be good. The halftime show, my expectations are very, very low. The commercial, a bunch of commercials. I've seen a few of them. I saw the Instacart one with Ben Stiller and that guy who was doing flips and stuff. That was pretty funny. I'll probably like any of the Gen X ones. I'll probably like, and I probably won't like the other ones. The music, the halftime show, you've got to understand where we come from. Okay, we had some of the best halftime shows. In the 80s, 90s. Even the early 2000s, kind of before it started, I stopped listening to new music around when I turned 50-ish, it started going down. Maybe 2015, maybe 10 years ago, it really started to go down. So yeah, there's so much to talk about today. But Mercury's going into Pisces, so and so that's kind of going to be my focus today. We still have a lot of, let's see, I talked about that. Oh yeah, we had snow too. And the stupid snowplow guy is, beeping and stuff. Went out there, moved my car. So at least when she came home, our spots were cleared, but the 2 people on either side of us didn't move. So the plow guy had to go back in and back out, and he couldn't, So I'm in the clear. I moved my damn car. Those people, I don't know. And then I go to move back in, and somebody's in my spot. I said, excuse me, you're in my spot. Oh, we are just moving. We will move. We are just going to move. We are just going to sit here for 2 seconds, and then we will move. And I said, okay. And they did. Finally. It took them 5 minutes. But finally get in. And then I was so cold by the time I got all the snow off my car with I got one of those fancy schmancy extendable brush things to get all the snow off my minivan. By the time I did that, I couldn't feel my face. Everything was frozen. I was going to go to the mailbox. I said, screw the mail. It was that cold. I couldn't even walk. And the cars were backed up because they couldn't go back to their spots because they plowed. Anyway, so that was my adventure today. I said, screw it. I'm going back in. Because I felt like I was going to freeze. I felt like my feet, even just working at my desk in my office, it's extreme. We haven't had a winter this cold and snowy in a while. So we got spoiled here in New England. Man, my feet, I stand at my desk. If I don't keep moving and stepping up on my little weight bench that I keep under my desk, my feet freeze. I looked for some shoes, some warm shoes at Job Lot. They were all picked over. They just had those little Ugg boot things. So I'll just put on a couple pairs of socks and a couple extra layers. I've got a T-shirt and this is the kind of stuff I used to wear when I was like in middle school. Cowl necks were really in back then in the 70s, late 70s. So yeah, that's kind of around the era I'm thinking today for the song. Actually 2 songs today. We'll get to that. One that just came out like a week ago, and one that came out like in the late 70s that most people will know. Kind of a romantic song for Valentine's Day. Whatever. Not that, I always thought it's not so much of a romantic holiday. All the companies made it that way because they wanted to sell chocolate and, stuffed animals and crap. I'm going to get myself a little box of chocolates when they go on sale after Valentine's Day. Get some of those Russell Stover things. I was going to get some, and they're like a little tiny box. Don't get me any food. A little tiny box with three chocolates in it. It was like $2 almost $3. I said, that's $1 a chocolate. That's a ripoff. I'm not getting that. Nobody get me anything. I'll get my own damn chocolate. Okay. That's, yeah. So we have, So it's for show and tell. Before I get too far into everything, like I said, astrologically, it's still Aquarius. The Sun, Venus, Mars, Pluto, still in Aquarius, but Mercury just moved into Pisces. So let's see, 1, 2, 2. It's square my Mercury. Let's see, is that right? 3, 4. Yeah, it's square to my Mercury. But Saturn is still in Pisces, and Neptune. Let's see, the node is in Pisces. Neptune just went into Aries. So, yeah, my focus today is going to be on Mercury and Pisces, because that's that energy is it's not so much it's more of a dreamy, intuitive, emotional, poetic, ruled by Neptune. Pisces is Neptune. So Mercury, when it's in Pisces, is kind of not so much of the mind, not so sharp and logical. It's more like cups energy in tarot. The cups are the water signs. And, the air signs are like, I think, the swords energy. They cut, they're mental, they cut right through, like Gemini, Aquarius, Libra, they're sharp. But, so feelings kind of rule over cold, hard facts. You kind of have to go with your feelings. It's more of a loosen your grip on facts and being sure about everything, and just kind of open yourself up to, inspiration, to, God, the spirit flowing through you with insights. Okay, so I had to get that in. Well, so you're talking about the game tomorrow. So Seattle, the only connection I kind of have to Seattle, I was thinking the band Heart. I love Heart. They're from Seattle. I saw them a couple times in concert. I did a Facebook thing today, so I won't go into it. But and my cousin, my oldest cousin on my dad's side, she's from Seattle. She's probably been, I mean, she was from Connecticut, but she's probably lived in Seattle longer than she lived in Connecticut at this point, because she's like 10 years older than me. So, but she plays in the Seattle field. She plays the French horn, and she fiddles, and she plays the banjo, and she's like a very smart, kind of very liberal-minded, progressive kind of person. You know, very Seattle. You know, think of like Frasier. You know, coffee, Starbucks, that whole thing. Seattle, fish, Sleepless in Seattle. You know, that's what I think when I think of Seattle, the Space Needle, you know, high-tech kind of firms. So, but, you know, like I said, I'm a New Englander, so, and I can't see myself going and living in that part of the country. There's a lot of boomers up in that area. A lot of female boomers living in that. So, yeah, my ex, I think this bag, one of the boys, somebody must have given it to one of the boys, or they got it as a birthday present. See, it's got all the teams on there. See, NFL. So let's see, this year it's, where's the Pats? There's the Pats. Seattle. What's Seattle? Let's see, are they on here? Of course they must be. Where's the Seahawks? There's, let's see, is that them? Is that them right there? Is that the Seahawks? I think so. Anyway, he gave me, oh, it smells like the basement. So he gave me a couple of things. This is show and tell, just a little bit. I guess I left this at the house. It's got my high school on there. See, my high school. It says, this must have been from one of the reunions. Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, ECHES.com. Yeah, it's a really nice pen. They must have given this to us at one of our reunions or something. So that's nice. And a little angel ornament that my aunt used to make for Christmas. And then, of course, he gave me a bag of Cape Cod low-fat chips. I guess I'll have a couple tomorrow night. Again, now, this is appropriate to what I'm going to be talking about today, because it's the ocean and the lighthouse, you see, light, and salt of the earth, the light of the world, okay? And you'll notice that this is a collector's item. It says they were made Cape Cod, Breeds Hill Road, Hyannis, Mass. And so this is a collector's item. I might take a picture and save the bag, because I just found out that they're no longer going to be making Cape Cod chips in Cape Cod. They're going to be made in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania or North Carolina or something like that. Really, Cape Cod Campbell's Soup Company? Really? So even my chips are going to be imposters. Anyway, so this fits with the theme today. It's about being truthful and having your actions, not just pretending to be good or pretending to be holy, but really walking your talk, backing it up, having empathy, having, compassion for other people, seeing things from other people's point of view, and helping the poor, housing the homeless, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, that kind of stuff. And then I have to show this because it's Valentine's week, and he made up. Thank you, son. He made up, and I said, I said, you don't have to, but he did anyway, so that's nice. I want to just show. This was our dog, BB, who just passed away at Christmas. And for her memorial, her little burial, he made me a little photo album of her pictures, And there she is. Isn't she cute? She's the doggie who is on the cover of my book, Dee Dee. And there's a whole bunch of, kids, her with the kids in the snow. And I could show all these, but, just some really fun pictures of her. Her and her, that's her, from her at the beginning, when she was a puppy. All the way. One of my favorite pictures of her was, bear with me, was with me when we were up in Maine, and this is relevant. This is when we were up in Maine, and she went in the canoe with us, went for a little ride. Yeah. Oh, what a girl. She's a great dog. So anyway, she'll live long in our memories. She'll be showing up in my stories. Anyway, I got lots of pictures of her, so I had to talk about that. Okay, Zazoo, get to the Bible, all right? So I talked about all that stuff, the chips and this stuff. Okay. There's a little football theme running through here today. I have to preface this. Sometimes I watch YouTube, like when I wake up, or sometimes it puts me to sleep if I watch certain people, like some of those influencers who like stock things, or, some of the moms, on there, and I've fallen asleep to astrologers, different people talking, except for my own stuff doesn't put me to sleep, but other people's stuff sometimes does if I'm tired. But anyway, I stumbled upon the Westminster Dog Show, which was last week, and I guess Penny the Doberman won, which it makes me think, like the kind of dog that is it Mr. Burns on The Simpsons had, call out the hounds. The Doberman's coming out. Anyway, it's that kind of dog. But I was thinking, like the sheepdog. There was one, I think one best in its class, the sheepdog. The big, poofy, they're the ones that herd the sheep, get the sheep, they bring up the rear and they keep the sheep, the stragglers, they go and they get the stragglers and keep everybody moving in the right direction, all together, all the sheep. And they, so the stragglers, it's kind of like if you run a race, my fear always was that I'd be like the last one. Coming in when I ran my half marathons, I was far from the last one. But you see these people, everybody's already come and gone, and you see these people coming, and I felt bad for them. But then they have street sweepers that come, after them at the end of the marathon to make sure that all the road gets swept and all the slower runners kind of get. Actually, when I was in a 100-mile bike race, 3 different years, and in a couple of years, I had like the vans behind me, not too far behind me, making sure that I got in. I was among the last, but I finished all those times. I finished. But 100 miles is it's a lot to ride in an afternoon, or I think I did it 4 to 5 hours, something like Yeah, something like that. It was a little over. It probably started around 9 or 10 o'clock and finished around 4 or 5. So, anyway, yeah, it wasn't the fastest, but I did it. Anyway, so you get the idea. The street sweepers coming on to, you know, and my former spouse, he had this thing. Whenever we'd be going somewhere, you know, and he'd be going to church or whatever, he'd hold the door to the garage, and then he'd have his arm like this, and you know, so the kids could go, and his mother, you know, if his mother was there, he'd be like this to get her to, you know, go, and he'd be telling me to come on. Well, it's like, would you stop? But he would do that. He'd hold the door, but he would do this arm thing to get all the stragglers. Come on, come on, come on. Especially if we were late going somewhere, you know. And I had a tendency to be running a little late sometimes, you know. And then, but anyway, so he would do the thing. And the joke was, you know, that I had to get my butt in the car, right? AIS, AIC or whatever. And, yeah. So Isaiah 48. So he's talking about the prophet Isaiah. He says, if we have real compassion and we're moved to help, you know, the homeless, the needy, the glory of God shall be your rear guard. He says, which basically is, to me it sounded like a football padding or football like defensive position, right? The rear guard. It probably is in some sport. I looked it up, but they have like linebackers and guards. You know, there are guards like on either side of the quarterback, right? To keep, you know, push ahead so that the quarterback can, you know, go and throw the ball. So you got those big guys that, and then you got the ones that kind of sweep around the edges, you know, to keep the path clear so that the quarterback can throw the ball and the receivers can receive it, right? So in other words, for the team to move forward, you have to have, you know, players keeping the opposition away, keeping the bad guys away, right? So it says, yeah, if we do that, you know, it's basically saying the difference between, you know, really feeling charity and acting upon it and just paying, you know, saying the words, right? Or just fasting for show, or just being, you know, giving to charity for show, right? But as opposed to authentic, you know, love for, you know, one another. So it says your light will, you know, if you do that, your light will break forth like the dawn, and wounds will quickly heal. So that's kind of like Chiron, you know, the wounded healer. Lord will answer our cries for help, and the gloom, the night will be like midday. In other words, you know, it's kind of Aquarian and the humanitarian focus of things, right? But it's sort of like, it's a great awakening, you know. In other words, we'll advance spiritually if we do those things, right? Because God knows when we're lying, right? He sees our soul, and it, you know, the spirit. When we rid ourselves of, you know, these bad habits, whatever bad habit we have, you know, saying, you know, things about other people that aren't true to bring them down, you know, that if we get rid of that, then our true light can shine forth, and we will receive protection and inspiration and all those good things, right? So the Psalm says, just man is a light in the darkness to the upright. So not only will we, you know, we become our true creative selves, and then other people will see us, you know, thriving, and they will be inspired to become their best selves, right? To improve their lives. So it's not just for ourselves to get ahead spiritually, though we will, but it's almost like we have to leave that part of us that thinks we're better than other people, thinks, and just act from the heart, act from an unselfish, humble place. And then God will have our back, and help sweep up the stragglers. In other words, they'll be, behind people who are behind us spiritually, right? God says, don't worry about that. I'll take care of you. I'll have your back. The rear guard is like, like when the Israelites went to the promised land, all the stragglers would be taken care of, right? The weaker ones. So when you do that, when you shine your light, you are taken care of. It's not to say that you have to go and save everybody, but by shining your own individual light that you have, giving your gifts that you've been given, they will automatically take care of those who will see God through you, right? See the divine through whatever you're doing, that you do, So it's going to be different for everybody. So, light shine through the darkness for the upright. I was just thinking Uranus is going into, Uranus is kind of like those lightning strikes, that rules Aquarius. Uranus is going into Gemini on my dad's birthday this year. He's going to be 89, April 25th this year. So that's just a little aside, but Uranus, Gemini rules technology, like communications, international relations, things like that. So that's going to be interesting. That's an air sign. So that's like the swords, So in other words, if you tell the truth, right, you don't have to worry about whether you wonder what you told this one or that one, and people can't bring you down, right? They have nothing on you. God will protect you because, if you're authentic and truthful, right, speak your truth and are forthright with things, right? And you have singular mind, purpose, singularity of purpose, right? Nobody can sway you. You will be, like that quarterback he's got to throw the ball, or the kicker, right? Kicker's got to get the ball through the goalpost. That's their one job, right? You screw that up, that's it, right? Quarterback has to get the ball to the receiver, or, himself, get the ball over the goal, right? Whether he passes it or whether he runs it, that's the job, right? So, but, like a team, you don't have to, everybody on God's team has a different position, different role to play, right? It's like a football team, you can't do it all yourself, right? This one, you move it to this one, that one takes it from there to there. Everybody's got a different body, a different set of skills, a different, right? Like you wouldn't see one of those 200-something pound linebackers, sprinting, because they're not built that way, right? And the quarterback is not going to go, he's got a great arm. He's not going to go and bash into somebody. You'll get flipped like a twig, up into the stands. It wouldn't be pretty, right? That little kicker guy, he's quick. He's not going to, it's pretty obvious what position he's going to be playing. Yeah. So anyway, that's just a little humor. Yeah. So let's see. Even Paul to the Corinthians, St. Paul is saying, he's talking to the Corinthians. He's saying, even I was afraid of public speaking. Paul, the apostle, he says, those speaking the truth are often the least slick or persuasive, right, and polished. But, they might have trembling voices. He said, with weakness, fear, and much trembling, but with the, you know, demonstrating the spirit and power so that others might believe, right? Not because of human wisdom, but because of the power of God. So that, that's telling right there. That, once you start, whether you're doing a YouTube channel, whatever way you're speaking up, you're shining your light. At first, you can be a little shaky. And when I started doing videos, I had things scripted out, and then I finally found my rhythm. I found, what worked for me, so that I would sound more natural, And the less scripted I am, the better I am. I can just kind of get into a rhythm, and, I'm not reading this. I've got notes. I look at them, and it jogs something, But at the beginning, I've been doing this for 5 years, and I've been writing, for a long time to try to find my voice, and it might be shaky at first, and, it takes a while for people to catch on to what you're saying sometimes, but you just keep doing it, keep showing up. That's what matters, right? So, St. Matthew, Book of Matthew. It's that reading. My high school teacher, Mr. Greer, always used to read this to us and tell us, say, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of, the world. Whoever follows me, says the Lord, will have the light of life. So the whole thing is, salt was seen as, very valuable and kind of expensive back in those days. It's a humble ingredient, right? Today we say salt, but that's what flavors our food, and they used it to preserve the food and protect it, right, from being corrupted, getting yucky, so that it could be eaten, right? It's salt, and then there's salt in the ocean, right? But salt in other words, it's a very humble element, right? But it's plentiful in the ocean, and you can trust salt, right? You have a sore throat, you put a little salt in some hot water and gargle, and it gets rid of the germs, right? It's very healing. You could take a salt bath. Say someone is salty when they kind of you're a little sarcastic, a little fresh, they call you salty, right? But the common folk, people who were fishermen, right? They smelled like salt. The apostles, they were fishermen. They were covered in salt. So this was something they understood, right? So it brings goodness to life. You put a little salt, things taste better. The pretzels are salty. Was it that Seinfeld where George says, the pretzels were very salty. Anyway, and so the light of the world thing is, you wouldn't light a lamp, right, and put it under a basket. You put it up so people in the house could see, and it would shed light light up your house, right? In the days before electricity, you have this one lamp, right? And you could use it to read by or do things, So it would change your life. And when they had electricity, well, it changed the world, didn't it? Having that light. You could turn it on anytime you wanted it. See? But, and then when you have like a lighthouse, like on the bag here, the lighthouse would guide the ships home, wouldn't it? Right? They would see the light, and they'd know where to go. They could make a beeline for the shore, and they wouldn't get lost out at sea. There's kind of a theme here, I think. So when you're singular in your purpose and you're authentic and truthful, right? People can see that. They'll see it. because you don't have to, you're not skulking around in the shadows, and when you have faith, right? That's when you can really shine out like that. So, coming up, okay, so this song, I was thinking Peter Gabriel's birthday is February 13th. Now, Genesis, when they started, I can't really remember Genesis. I mean, I know Peter Gabriel was in it, but Genesis for most of my life has been without Peter Gabriel, because he left in 1975. And I didn't really listen to Genesis before then, Most of their music that I'm familiar with is from when it was not Peter Gabriel. Like Peter Gabriel on his own, I know, for most of the 80s, and still today. So I've got one Genesis song. It's interesting that he's an Aquarius and Phil Collins an Aquarius, and maybe they're creatively they sort of conflicted, because they were too close. I don't know. But yeah, so I got two songs. That Follow You, Follow Me was February 24th, 1978. So this is after Peter Gabriel left, but I'm still going to include it. So it was Phil Collins. They said this is one of the songs that was a true group written song, because let's see, they said Mike Rutherford kind of came up with a riff. He got going with a riff, and then Tony Banks came in with the melody and the chords, and Phil with the drums, and then the lyrics. Mike wrote the lyrics in like 10 minutes, so it was a whole. They worked really well together. Kind of a light, flowing, sort of a romantic song. They said they had to redress the imbalance. To address the imbalance. A lot of guys were listening to their songs. They wanted some women that sort of attract some more female fans. So they wrote this sort of a romantic song that people could play at weddings or dance to or whatever. So it definitely worked. This one was the first single from their ninth studio album, and then there were three. Got to number 23 in the U.S., their first top 40 hit, and number 7 in the U.K. That was their first top 10 hit in the top 10 in the U.K. So, and if you think of it as follow you, follow me, we're God's followers, right? We follow him, and he follows us, or the source, creator, the universe backs us up, right? Follows us. So, but we have to follow him first, and then he'll follow us. Right? Just one tear in each passing year. I thought that's the whole idea of the gloom being wiped away. It's kind of appropriate, And then the second song, I got it. Every full moon, Peter Gabriel puts out a new song, and this one, from the most recent Leo full moon, he did. It's called "Put the Bucket Down," and it's the kind of song there's no video, you just listen to it. But there's art, pictures of spiders, which I thought was kind of cool. He teams up with different, musicians and artists, and he comes up with a whole concept thing with the full moon, So the bucket is all the stuff in our head, right, that we carry around that gets in the way. Put that down so we can find our way forward by intuition. So I thought this was a good one to kind of, meditate to, right, to come up with some ideas. And that gets happy birthday to Peter Gabriel. That's a nod to him. In his, how cool is it that he's still, recording, and the font of inspiration is not running, is just ever flowing there. you know. So yeah, like Peter Gabriel. So that's all I got for this week. I'm gonna, like I said, go make my chowder and get ready to go root for the Pats tomorrow. And either way, I'll be happy. Yeah, because it's just a game, you know. So, but you know, then there will be food. So anyway, I hope you stay warm. Enjoy the game if you're going to watch it, if you're in the U.S. or whatever. And I'll be back next week, same place, different time. Take care, everybody. Zazoo Plazz out.